Page 157. When we walk with the Lord in the light of His word, what a glory He sheds on our way. While we do His good will, He abides with us still, and with all who will trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. Not a shadow can rise, not a cloud in the skies, but His smile quickly drives it away. Not a doubt nor a fear, not a sign or a tear can abide while we trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. Not a burden we bear, not a sorrow we share, but our toil He doth richly repay. Not a grief nor a loss, not a frown nor a cross, but is blessed if we trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. Then in fellowship sweet we will sit at His feet, or will walk by His side in the way. What He says we will do, where He sends we will go. Never fear, only trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. Does anyone have a song? Or? Let's try page 285 then. I have found a friend in Jesus, He's everything to me. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul, the lily of the valley, in Him alone I see all I need to cleanse and keep me fully whole. In sorrow He's my comfort, in trouble He's my stay. He tells me every care on Him to roll. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. He all my grief has taken, and all my sorrows borne. In temptation he's my strong and mighty tower. I have all for him forsaken, and all my idols torn from my heart, and now he keeps me by his power. Though all the world forsake me, and Satan tempts me sore, through Jesus I shall safely reach the goal. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. He will never, never leave me, nor yet forsake me here, while I live by faith and do his blessed will. A wall of fire about me, I've nothing now to fear. With his manna he my hungry soul shall fill. Then sweeping up to glory to see his blessed face, where rivers of delight shall ever roll. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. Does anybody have a song or word or anything before we get in the message? Well, if not, we'll get in the message. If you have your Bibles, we'll be in Matthew chapter 7. Don't think we're going to read too many verses here, but I believe we're just going to start in at verse number 12 of Matthew chapter 7. It says, "Therefore all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way that leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Ye shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns, or figs of thistles? Even so every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them." And that's all we're going to read. More than I thought we would. Very familiar scripture here. But I want to think this morning on verses 13 and 14 there, where he said, "Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction. And many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way, which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it." And you know, we know these scriptures and we understand what the Lord's saying here, but you know, you look at this and you see where he said, to enter ye in at the straight gate. And you know, as I've often said, and I didn't have the definition exactly right, although it was, in the way I defined it, I was probably right, but the definition wasn't what they say it is. But this word straight, it doesn't mean a straight path like you'd say straight is narrow. But this straight is used a lot in terms of like seafaring. It's a narrow body of water between two bigger bodies of water, between two oceans. So it's a narrow path there, and usually these straits, as I've often defined it, is a place of great difficulty. Because when you've got the two oceans and then you've got these land masses pushed together, the seas are usually very choppy, and the waves are high, and you know, there's a lot of times strange tides and rocks, and it's a place of difficulty. It's a difficult pass, a strait. You know, he said here to enter ye in at the straight gate. And he said on down because straight is the gate and narrow is the way. You know, the path to heaven is a narrow path. You know, he didn't promise us it was going to be easy. He promised us it would be possible. He promised us he would help us. But he didn't say being a Christian and getting to heaven was going to be easy. I don't read of anybody in the Bible that found it easy to serve God. It was difficult. It was hard. A lot of times we say, well, it's going to be easy, but it's not necessarily easy. It's a difficult path. It's a narrow path. You know, he said, wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction. If a person wants to go to hell, and I don't know why anybody would, but you hear people sometimes say, well, I want to go to hell. You know, if they truly knew what hell was like, they wouldn't want to go there. But if you want to get to hell, it's easy. Sit around and do nothing. Don't go to church. Don't pray to God. Go out here and do whatever you want in the world. You'll get to hell someday. That's very easy. You know, it's kind of like the saying, falling off a log backwards. It's very easy to fall off a log. You know, sometimes it's a little harder to stay on. Sometimes it's a little harder to stay on the path, the straight and narrow path. You know, it's a difficult path. It's a difficult life to worship God, but it's a good life. Just because it's hard doesn't mean it's miserable or it's painful. You know, we should be a happy people. We are a blessed people. And because of that, we should be happy. But that doesn't mean it's going to be easy to serve God. We have to make a change. We have to make a choice of how we're going to live. We have to make a choice of what we're going to do. But we've got to make that decision that we're going to serve God, that we're going to continue, that we're going to work. You know, there's a lot of people through the Bible who struggled in their lives, and they struggled with decisions they had to make. You know, I think about over here in 2 Samuel, you know, David, if you remember under the law, God commanded that the people would not be numbered, that they would never go through and count all the children of Israel and number them. And, you know, we don't really understand why God commanded this. He didn't explain. He don't have to. But it was God's commandment. But we see that the Lord's anger here was kindled against Israel. And he calls David to move against them and to number them. You know, and David sent and he told somebody to go and number the people, and they went and they numbered all the people, which was forbidden. And when they came and they gave the sum of the number of the people to King David, David realized he had done wrong. David realized that they had sinned, and his heart smote him. But God sent the prophet Gad down there to speak to him, and he told him, you know, he told him he was going to be punished, basically. But Gad came to David and told him and said, thus saith the Lord, I offer thee 3 things. Choose one of them that I may do it unto you. So basically God said, I'm going to punish you, and you get to choose which punishment. He said, shall 7 years of famine come unto thee in the land? Or wilt thou flee 3 months from thine enemies? Or that there be 3 days pestilence in thy land? Now advise and see what answer I shall return to him that sent me. Here's your choices of the punishment the children of Israel is going to face. Which one do you want to do? Which one do you want? And David said unto Gad, I am in a great strait. He said, this is a narrow path. This is a difficult choice. I don't know what I should do. Whichever one it is, people's going to suffer. People's going to die. I don't want to make this choice. We face choices in life that are difficult. We have to choose between serving God and serving, the world. We have to choose between sometimes God and our friends, or even sometimes God and our family. Because sometimes people will push us away or hate us and revile us for loving God. But we have to make these choices. But he said, I'm in a great strait. This is a hard decision. But I like his response. He said, let us now fall into the hand of the Lord, for his mercies are great. And let me not fall into the hand of man. He said, this is a hard choice. I'm going to let God choose. But he did say, but don't let me fall into the hands of man. Let God punish me, not man. So the Bible said that the Lord sent a pestilence upon Israel. And there died of the people from Dan even to Beersheba 70,000 men because of their sins, because of their wrongs. But he said, I'm in a great strait. This is a difficult choice. But I'm going to let the Lord take care of it. I'm going to let the Lord judge me and deal with me. We have to make the choice to follow God. We have to make the choice to put our trust in God. Man may hate us. Man may revile us. Man may cast us away. But as long as we've got God, we've got hope. But it's not always an easy journey. There's so many in the Bible that suffered for the Lord's sake. Paul said in one place of Paul that he counted all his sufferings for loss, for nothing. It was okay, for the Lord's sake, because he was willing to suffer for his sake. He was willing to be stoned for the sake of Christ. Stephen was willing to be stoned for the sake of Christ and for the sake that his people might be saved. We have to choose. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be difficult sometimes. Choosing to serve the Lord for young people, especially in this day and time, it's difficult to choose to serve God because they are ridiculed. They are attacked. And even for adults and older people as well, it's difficult sometimes because people pressure you not to serve God. They have all these things. Well, let's go do this. You don't need to go to church. Let's go have a good time. Let's go do this or that. And, they push us. And they push us to forget about God and to choose these things instead. And the world pushes us. Well, you're in the wrong for believing what you believe. You shouldn't serve that God. That God's a hateful God. No, our God's a loving God. If our God was a hateful God, he'd just strike all the wicked down and be done with it. But he loves the wicked enough, he gives them a chance to be saved. He loves the lost enough, he gives them a chance to be saved. He's got more mercy and love than mankind has. But he gives us a choice. But it's not always easy. Serving God is not an easy journey. The disciples, several of them, different times, were cast into prison for serving Christ. Jesus himself was faced, different times that the Jews wanted to kill him. They sought to kill him, to take hold of him. The Lord would deliver him. But you think about how hard it was for the Lord, these people that he loved, that he had come and was getting ready to die for, hated him so much, despised him so much. Think of that, how that must have hurt the Lord. Think about how hard that must have been for God, knowing, I love these people, but they're going to kill me. Think of how hard it was for him sitting across from Judas, knowing, even though Judas was one of his, knowing Judas is probably going to betray me. Judas is going to betray me and sell me for a little bit of silver and cause me to die. You think about how much that must have hurt the Lord knowing that. He loved Judas. Judas was probably like a brother to him. Now, they were friends. But he knew these things. But he loved them anyways. It's not an easy path. Anybody that says it's easy to serve God is mistaken. Because it's not. We're going to have to make a lot of choices in our life, and we're going to have to make a lot of decisions. But if we'll trust in God, He brings us through. We may face difficult times. We may face these rough waters that I spoke about in most of these straits. You've got all these rough waters, and it's sometimes hard to sail in. But we know that even if we face those hard times, God can see us through. I think back there to Elijah. When Jezebel had ordered that he be put to death, she said, I'm gonna kill you. And Elijah fled up into the mountain and hid, or came down and sat down went up into the wilderness and sat under a juniper tree, and requested for himself that he might die. He said, it's enough. Now, O Lord, take my life, for I am not better than my father. I've had it. What's the point in living? There just ain't no point. And he lay down and he slept. We know the story. But he lay down and slept, and an angel touched him and said, arise and eat. And he looked, and there was a cake bowl cooking on the coals, and a cruse of water at his head. And he ate and drank and laid down again and went back to sleep. And the angel of the Lord came again the second time and touched him and said, arise and eat, because the journey is too great for thee. And I think about that. He said the second time, arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you. It's too hard. So here's I'm going to feed you. I'm going to water you. I'm going to give you water to eat or drink and food to eat to give you strength to go on. You just can't do it alone. We can't do it alone. We can't serve God alone. We can't make it to heaven alone. But with God by our side, we can make it. We can make it through. The Bible said he arose and ate and drank, or did eat and drink, and went on the strength of that meat 40 days and 40 nights unto Horeb, the Mount of God. So if I'm reading that right, they say, I think that you can, the human body can go, I believe it's 3 days without water, and I believe it's 7 days without food. Or something, I'm not getting those days right. But anyways, it's not that long. But if I'm reading this right, he went 40 days without eating or drinking, because he went on the strength of this meat for 40 days. Now they say that's impossible, but he done it. The journey was too hard for him. But with God and God's strength, it was possible. But a lot of times we don't see that. A lot of times we see how difficult the journey is. We see how narrow and rough the path is. I've seen videos online, and, some of our mountain roads around here are pretty rough. They're pretty narrow. They're pretty steep. Dirt roads. But I've seen some pictures and videos of some in some of these other countries. It's poor, and you'll see a whole bus load of people, even people sitting on top of the bus, and literally one wheel's almost hanging off the side of a sheer cliff. And I'm thinking, nope, I'd walk before I get on that bus. There ain't no way. Barely room that the bus can even stay on the road. That's a bad road. That's a rough road. It may look rough, it may look hard. And it is hard. But if we put our trust in God, He's right there with us. Just like when I believe it was Elisha, when the king sent after him, and we go over this. I'm not going to turn to it or read it, go into it a lot, but his servant went out, and the king's army was surrounding the tower. And he went back in, and he said, Master, how shall we do? And Elisha prayed that God would open the eyes of his servant. And when he opened his eyes, the whole mountain was full with horses and chariots of fire. The whole army of God was encamped around. There's more for us than there is of them. There's more strength for us, more power for God's people than there is for the world. The devil's strong, but God's stronger. There's some out there that mistakenly believe the devil might defeat God. The devil never could defeat God. He never had that power. He can only has the power to defeat us, and only then if we let him. If we let him. Straight is the way, and narrow is the gate that leadeth unto life, and few there be that findeth. It's a difficult journey. It's hard. Sometimes we say, well, it's just too hard, I can't go on. But that's when we need to look to the cross. That's when we need to look to Jesus and say, I can't do it, but I know you can. I know you can pick me up and carry me. I know you can give me the strength from your meat, from your water, to make it on in. And that's when we go trust in him. But he told them here to enter in at the straight gate. For wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leads to destruction. As I said, it's easy to serve the world. It's easy to serve the devil because you can do nothing. But it is a struggle to be a Christian. People say, well, it's easy. But it's not always easy. It's not easy to sit Sunday after Sunday, day after day, all through the week, and knowing that if the Lord comes back, you've got family that's not going to make it in. Knowing that you've got family that if they died and left this earth now, they would go to hell. That they wouldn't make it. That you'd never see them again. That's hard. People don't realize that. They think, that we don't think about them. But we do. We think about our families. We think about our friends that are lost. And we long to see them come to God because we love them. Because we want them to have a chance at knowing God and entering into that narrow gate. People don't realize sometimes the struggle that Christians go through because we ain't just living for ourselves. We're not just thinking about ourselves. If we are, we don't really have Christ in our lives too often much. Because we're thinking about the other people. We're thinking about the people that needs God, that needs his help, and that needs his strength. True Christians, we're not thinking about the numbers on our church roll. We're not thinking about the money in the offering plate. We're thinking about wanting to see people in God's house and see people saved. We want to see the church full. But not so you can just put a lot of money in the offering plates. That doesn't matter. What we want to see is people come to church and worship God. See our lost people saved. People attack the Christians and say, oh, you're just hateful people. No, we just care about you. Just like our parents. There's a lot of times that I got in a lot of trouble growing up. I wasn't into nothing real bad. But now I knew when my mama was getting upset. I knew when I was about to get it. I don't remember many times we let her count to 3. Most time, as I've said, we didn't know what was coming if she got to 3, but we knew we didn't want none of it. But we knew that we was going to get in trouble. And it was because they loved us. It was because they cared and they wanted us to be safe and they wanted us to grow up to be good people. Grow up to serve God and grow up to live a good life. I realized that. Didn't always realize that fully when I was a kid. When I was grounded or getting a spanking or whatever, I didn't always understand the why of it. But we do now. And that's what we think when we look at the world. We don't hate the world. We just want them to be saved so they've got a chance at life. Because many finds the way to hell, but only a few make it into heaven. Only a few. Because it is difficult. It is a rough journey. It is a hard life. Paul in Philippians said, for I am in a strait betwixt two, having a desire to depart and to be with Christ, which is far better. Nevertheless, to abide in the flesh is more needful for you. And having this confidence, I know that I shall abide and continue with you all for your furtherance and joy of faith. He said, I'm in a strait betwixt two. I imagine at this point in his life, I don't know. I know Paul went through a lot of issues. He was under house arrest. He had what he described as a thorn in the flesh. I don't know what that was. I don't know if it was a physical illness or just a burden or what. But Paul here said, for me, it would be better if I just go on to be with the Lord. I have a desire to depart and be with Christ. which is far better for me. And ain't we all that way? To an extent, we'd be better off if we went on to heaven. But our families wouldn't be, our friends wouldn't be, our churches wouldn't be, the lost wouldn't be. He said, but nevertheless, to abide in the flesh is more needful for you. He was saying, you need me to stay here and teach and preach and write these letters and, to warn the people. So he said, having this confidence, I know I shall abide and continue. It'd be better for me to go on, but I still have a job to do down here. We've got a job to do. It's not an easy job. It's not an easy life, but it's a needful life. If God didn't mean for His church to work and to continue, He would just take us on when we got saved. But He leaves us here because we've got a job to do, to reach our lost, to reach our families, to show them how to serve God, to be honest with them. We need to be honest. Being a Christian, is not all fun and games. It's a hard life, but it's a good life. Because even when the times are hard and the times are rough, if we got God, we know we're going to be all right. We know no matter what the world may throw at us, I'm going to be all right. Whether I live or whether I die, I'm going to be all right. And that's a peace. You hear people talk about when their family goes on to be with the Lord, and those that know God, when they face that trip, when they face leaving this earth and dying, they're at peace. They're at peace and they're content a lot of times because they know what's coming is far better than what they're leaving. And that's good. But that don't necessarily make the leaving easier on people. That don't necessarily make the life easy. But it does make it worthwhile. We've got to choose who we're going to serve. We've got to make sure we're continuing on the path. But it's going to be hard. But we got to realize, even though it's difficult, we have help. We have somebody there to take care of us, to watch over us. The path may be narrow, the path may be difficult, but Christ is right there to lead us. Christ is right there to take us through. All we got to do is look to Him. All we got to do is hold on to Him. Sometimes we get into jobs, and there's been times I get started working on something around the house and lifting something heavy, and I'll get it about half lifted, and I'll start thinking, oh boy, I should have waited and got some help on this. I'm sure we've all got into a situation like that. Oh, I wish I had somebody helping me. Get up on a ladder and that ladder starts to move and you start thinking, oh, I wish somebody was down there holding that ladder still before I fall. And we all face those situations. But it's the same in our spiritual life. We might feel like we just can't do it. It's just too hard. I can't do it anymore. But if we'll look, the Lord's right there beside us. Just as when Elisha was there in the tent, in the tower, and his servant went out and looked. The servant couldn't see the army of God because he wasn't looking. But when God opened his eyes, he saw the whole army of God. Horses and chariots of fire. Just standing there. Just take care of them. Now, if God sent His angels to take care of them, do you think His angels ain't standing around taking care of us too? You think they ain't standing there watching over us too? You think the Holy Spirit ain't there taking care of us? He is. We've just got to look for it. We've just got to wait for it. So let's look to God. Let's realize He has all power. Let's realize that we're going to struggle and we're going to have hard times, that He's going to bless us and we're going to make it through. If we wait on Him. If we hold on to Him. But the path is not always going to be easy. But it will be worthwhile. It will be worth it. As the old song is, it'll be worth it after a while. When we get to heaven, all of our struggles and all of our trials will be forgotten. And we'll just be blessed. We'll be happy if we continue in Him. If we wait on the Lord. But if we don't wait on God, we're not going to make it. It's easy to make it to hell. It's easy to miss heaven, but it's not so easy to get in. You're not going to stumble and fall into heaven. You're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to try. But if we're going to make it into heaven, we're going to have to look to God. We're going to have faith. We're going to have to trust Him and realize that He can see us through. But we've got to hold on. We've got to continue. But, it's nothing to get discouraged at. It's nothing to say, well, I'm just not going to make it. I just can't make it. There ain't no point trying. There's a lot of people that feels that way sometimes. I guess at some point we all feel that way a little bit. But there's people that they just say, well, I just can't make it. Elijah, at least twice that we have recorded, he just decided, I can't make it. Here when the angel fed him, and then when he got up there on the mountain and was in the cave, he said, Lord, just take me out. I can't do it anymore. There's just no point. But he could, and he did. And he went on to do a lot of great works for God. Because God had a job for him to do. It wasn't easy, but it was needful. It ain't always going to be easy serving the Lord. But it's a whole lot easier than going through life without Him. Because if we're going through life without Him, what hope do we have? What strength do we have? But if we have God, we can be happy. And if we have God, we can be blessed beyond anything the world can know. Because the world may have the riches, the world may have all the things of this life, but they don't have God. And without God, what does any of that mean? Absolutely nothing. Without God, it shall all perish. But with the Lord, all things are possible. And what a great day is coming when He comes back. If we're ready, and if we make it through that narrow gate, that straight gate. It's a small one, but we can make it through if we wait on Him. Share the message this morning. I know I ain't been up here too awful long, but I feel I'm done, so we'll leave it at that.